Few singer-songwriters exemplify the country spirit like Loretta Lynn. However, her authentic grit is the result of a lifetime's worth of struggles, starting when she was just a young girl. Loretta came from a difficult childhood into an equally difficult adulthood, and despair has seemed to follow her at nearly every turn. Join Factsverse as we explore Loretta Lynn's lifelong battle with death and addiction. Loretta Lynn was born Loretta Webb on April 14, 1932. She was born in Kentucky. As her hit coal miner's daughter might suggest, she was one of 7 children of a coal miner. Due to the fact she was raised during the Great Depression, Loretta's family had a lot of economic troubles when she was growing up. Since Loretta's family didn't have extra money for fun and games, she began passing the time by practicing singing. While this initially was just a hobby, it was something that would pay off later. Although the family couldn't afford instruments, Loretta toiled away the hours singing and rocking her younger siblings to sleep. Loretta's tough home life led her to make the decision to marry at an early age. Some sources indicate she married at 16, but others indicate it was 13. Whatever age, she was certainly much too young to enter into the decision. But despite some troubles early on, she and her husband stayed together until his death many years later. Loretta's husband was a man named Oliver Lynn, and he was 21 years old when they married. She knew him by the nickname Doolittle, and didn't even learn his full name until the day they tied the knot. Due to Loretta's inexperience, she didn't know much about conception or birth. She was surprised several months later when a doctor told her she was pregnant. Although Oliver was initially hesitant, the two made it work. Although Loretta had never before picked up a guitar, Oliver bought her one as a birthday gift one year because he felt her singing voice had a lot of promise. It was this that inspired Loretta to begin practicing as a singer-songwriter in hopes of someday striking it big. She was coming from a time when there weren't a lot of female singer-songwriters, and this has led her to be known as a pioneer. Eventually, Loretta was working alongside local bands and performing at various live events around her area. In 1960, she released her first official single, titled I'm a Honky-Tonk Girl. From there, it was a gradual climb to the top for Loretta, and she eventually made her way to being the icon she is today. But that rise to fame came with plenty of personal struggles. Despite the fact Oliver was the one who inspired Loretta to pick up the guitar, their relationship wasn't always the healthiest. Oliver was known to be an abusive alcoholic in the early years of their marriage. Loretta was incredibly affected by the abuse, but chose to stay with him due to the fact he was the father of her children. According to her, she wanted to leave, but felt it would be a selfish decision. Instead of divorcing her husband, Loretta chose to channel her domestic turmoil into her songs. Many of them have tackled the topic of abuse from a personal angle, including Don't Come Home A-Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind and Fist City. She's always been vocal about the fact that her husband hit her on numerous occasions. But she's been even more vocal about the fact that she wasn't afraid to hit him back even harder. Loretta and her husband worked through their issues for their family. However, that didn't stop tragedy from striking. In 1984, Loretta's oldest son, Jack Benny Lynn, drowned to death. According to Loretta, it was one of the most devastating experiences of her life, and something that stays with her to this day. She was so deeply affected, her brain refused to remember the details of his funeral as a defense mechanism. The death of her eldest son Jack was just one of many personal tragedies Loretta has experienced. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Loretta's husband Oliver passed away 12 years later in 1996, and his loss devastated Loretta nearly as hard as Jack's. Although the two had experienced their issues throughout their marriage, they were incredibly close due to the time they spent together. In 2013, Loretta's oldest daughter died. 3 years later, her oldest grandson died. He was Jack's son. Besides the death of some of her closest family members, Loretta has also had to experience the death of one of her closest personal friends. That was fellow country singer Patsy Cline, a performer who acted as somewhat of a mentor to Loretta during her early days as a musician. Both Loretta and Patsy appeared to be destined for great things when it came to the country music scene, but fate decided to cut Patsy's life short well before her time. She died in a plane crash at age 30, leaving young Loretta stricken with grief. Although Patsy died at a young age, her memory never died in Loretta's mind. Loretta and Patsy were great friends during Patsy's later years, and Loretta has shared that the two bad country girls had a proclivity for getting into trouble. According to Loretta, the two would likely be in prison today if it weren't for Patsy getting her life cut short. Although this was certainly a joke, one could imagine Loretta might gladly pay that price if it meant she could see her friend again. Although Loretta is still with us today, she's had her fair share of health problems. In 2017, she suffered a massive stroke. Several months later, in early 2018, she had a fall at her home and injured her hip. Later that year, she was hospitalized once again for undisclosed issues. But it appears she has long since been back at home and claims to be in fine health. In addition to overcoming her recent health struggles, Loretta has also had to overcome issues with addiction. She's dealt with ulcers and chronic pain from an early age, a struggle that once led her down the rabbit hole of prescription painkillers. And she's dealt with severe insomnia, resulting in issues with sleeping pills. The height of her addiction to painkillers and sleeping pills was during the 70s. After a while, the problem spiraled out of control, and Loretta decided to seek out professional help. Thankfully, she was able to eventually knock her bad habits. Nowadays, the songwriter is seemingly clean and sober. In addition to her addiction to painkillers and sleeping pills, Loretta has also brought about a fair amount of controversy for talking about a different kind of pill. She famously wrote a song called "The Pill." The song praised the birth control pill, which was gaining popularity at the time. It was released in 1975 and garnered a lot of criticism from puritanical listeners. Around 60 radio stations across the country banned the song from play. But the pill certainly hasn't been Loretta's only controversial song. Despite claiming she's never meant to shock anyone, she's had around a dozen songs banned over the course of her career. This includes the aforementioned "The Pill," a song about how divorce affects women differently, titled "Rated X," and her aforementioned songs about spousal abuse. Through it all, Loretta has simply been singing about her own life experiences from a feminist perspective. In the past 20 years, Loretta has had a bit of a resurgence thanks in no small part to Jack White of the White Stripes and his record label Third Man Records. Jack produced Loretta's 2004 album Van Leer Rose, which proved to be Loretta's most critically acclaimed work in decades. It won the Grammy Award for Best Country Album of the Year. Since this, Loretta has maintained steady success, even playing at Bonnaroo in 2011. Loretta is still releasing albums today, with her most recent one having been released on March 19, 2021. It was titled "Still Woman Enough" and was produced by Johnny Cash's son, John Carter Cash. Despite numerous health issues and a life of pain and struggle, Loretta Lynn has persevered with her true country grit in ways not even most of her male contemporaries could. Now it's time to hear from you. Comment down below to share what your favorite musical memory is when it comes to Loretta Lynn. And be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.